Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. So I want to give my thoughts on the announcement surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2, the price, the controversies, the impact with tariffs, the cost of game cards that are going up to $79.99, the fact that some of the game cards are just digital downloads, meaning a game key in a box. So I want to discuss all of this and what it looks like for the future of physical video games. Because you all know, if you subscribe to this channel, this is a hardcore collectibles finance channel, but we are 100% pro physical media on this channel, simply because, obviously, if you're going to invest in any type of video game, it should be in physical form. That's what really led to the rise of video game prices and continues to lead to the rise of classic vintage video game prices at present time in an era where almost every company is chomping at the bit to do away with our beloved physical media. So a few days ago, before the tariff chaos engulfed the stock market, Wall Street, and worldwide investment banking by and large, Nintendo announced that the Nintendo Switch 2, the long-awaited sequel to everybody's favorite Nintendo system, would debut on June 5th, 2025, which is really, at the recording of this video, roughly less than 2 months away. Now, Nintendo followed this up, of course, with an hour-long Nintendo Direct broadcast that showed the new system, the games, and some of the features that it is going to have, good, bad, or indifferent. So what I want to do in this video is to go through the pluses and minuses and give you my thoughts, and also tell you how this is going to affect the vintage video game market going forward, because there are some interesting wrenches that were thrown into this that we really need to discuss, because it is going to have an impact on the market going forward, especially if we look out 10 to 20 years. So let's first talk about the price. As expected, most people thought that this thing would probably cost around $400. Nintendo came in and announced right off the bat that this, again, was before the tariff announcements. The base unit's going to cost $449.99, so roughly $450. Then they also stated there is going to be a Super Mario Kart World bundle, which is the new Mario Kart game, that is going to cost $499.99, so roughly $500 if you want it with the digital-only download Mario Kart game on it. Now, obviously, most people are probably going to go for the $500 bundle, because most people are probably going to buy Mario Kart anyway with the system. Now, personally, I like the days when companies would actually pack in a physical copy of the game with their hardware. Unfortunately, though, this really isn't a thing anymore. Even if we go back to the Nintendo 2DS, 3DS era, Nintendo was already putting games pre-installed on the console. So even if you bought a bundle package, you never got a physical game regardless. So this is just the nature of the beast. Most people, like I said, if you're going to go after a Nintendo Switch 2 and you're dead set in getting one, you're probably going to try to go after the $500 Mario Kart bundle. Now, what do I think about the price? Honestly, right now, I assumed Nintendo was going to price this right around $400 and $450. So this really isn't a big shock to me. I mean, a couple of years back, we saw the incredible launch of the Sony PlayStation 5. That hit store shelves at $499 for the disc-based version. So it shouldn't be too much of a shock that Nintendo is starting to go in this direction when Microsoft and Sony were already headed in this direction many, many years ago. So it's kind of time that Nintendo jumped on this bandwagon, where Nintendo makes systems that are usually a little less powerful than their competitors. But we all knew with the Nintendo Switch OLED version, that they were already in the mode of wanting to charge a little bit more for their systems. And to be fair, Nintendo makes profit on the hardware that they produce, whereas usually in the case with Sony and Microsoft specifically, they actually lose money on the hardware so that they can make up for it when people buy games and software to play on that device. Nintendo has always made profitable hardware from the get-go. This is a core crux of their business plan. As a matter of fact, if you ever read their 10K annual shareholder report, it is actually mentioned in there multiple times that the key to Nintendo's success is that they make money on their hardware systems. And I got to give them credit. Over the last few years, their hardware systems have been relatively fairly priced compared to the competition. Now, let's talk about the impact on tariffs, because I'm sure that a lot of you are now aware. Nintendo did state that they are putting all pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 system, at least in the US, on hold indefinitely, just until they can figure out how much of an impact the tariffs are potentially going to have on the price of this system. And to be fair, this really isn't Nintendo's fault. It's just that they're caught in this weird era where they're attempting to release new hardware in a world of uncertainty. Now, I'm not going to get political in this video, I assure you. As much as I am against the tariffs, as much I think this is a stupid idea, we still have to see how this unfolds over the next few months. The impact on this has yet to be seen as a result, because we don't know how this is going to play out. If Trump decides that these tariffs are not a good idea 1 month from now, this could change the whole dynamic of this. On the other flip side of the coin, if Trump decides to go all head first into this idea, no one's going to be able to talk him out of it. It is possible that the Nintendo Switch 2 could cost close to $700 or more at launch. If that happens, it's going to be a disaster for the video game industry by and large. It's going to be a disaster for Nintendo. And not only that, there's going to be people out there that do not understand the current economic and political environment that we are in, and they're going to blame Nintendo for that insane price increase, especially given the fact that Nintendo announced this item was going to sell for either $450 or $500 with Mario Kart at launch. So this could potentially spin into a negative PR issue for Nintendo by and large. We're going to have to see what develops. Speaking of PR issues, there is another controversy that is brewing in the mist. For those of you that have checked out the pricing for a lot of the first-party game cards that are being produced by Nintendo in physical form for the Nintendo Switch, Mario Kart World by itself is set to retail for $79.99. So is Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, obviously, these are top-tier titles. They're going to sell well regardless. But a lot of people are upset because the most expensive Nintendo-made Nintendo Switch game at present time is Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which only sells for $69.99. And if you were lucky to get it around the holiday season, you could have gotten it for $49.99. I saw it sold for. I also see it sometimes on sale for $59.99. So this is a departure from $59.99 games that we're used to in the United States. Now, to be fair, if we get my DeLorean time machine, we go back to the 1990s. I specifically remember buying a copy of Final Fantasy III for the Super Nintendo back in the day from Electronics Boutique. And when that game came out, it retailed for $79.99. I also was a spoiled bastard growing up, and I had a Neo Geo AES. And any of you that have ever owned a Neo Geo back in the day, you know that cartridges started at roughly $150 for each game. So I personally, and I want to tread with controversy here because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to go against me on this. I'm not too concerned of the $79.99 price tag for a lot of these games as long as the entire game is on that game card. The problem that I do have, they're showing games like Bravely Default, which I saw advertised for $39.99, which I thought was a steal. But if you actually read the description, it's almost like a downcode key in a box. The entire game is not on that game card. If Nintendo and third-party publishers are going to go in that direction, I have a severe problem, not only with the pricing, but the fact that we are now going in a direction that goes against physical media. One thing that I love about this type of Nintendo system, whether it's the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch 2, you don't see Nintendo pushing a media-less version on us like Sony did with the Sony PlayStation 5 launch, where they had the disc drive version of the PlayStation 5 set at $499, but you could also buy a discless, I know that almost sounds inappropriate, right? A discless, medialess version for $399.99. Microsoft did the same thing with their Xbox line of systems. I always had a problem with that because I know a lot of these manufacturers are just chomping at the bit to do away with physical media. Well, obviously, if you sell a downcode card in a box that requires the user to go online and download the rest of that game, that's equivalent to putting out a digital-only version of that game. So from a physical media preservation standpoint, I have a problem with this. I am not upset with the fact that these games are going to cost $79.99 because what's most likely going to happen, if there's ever a sale, these games are going to be on sale. We already know this, for $59.99. Another thing that I want to add here is keep in mind, Nintendo has yet to introduce a budget line of games for the original Nintendo Switch console. We don't have a Nintendo Selects version. We don't have a Player's Choice version. And when we really look at the numbers, the Nintendo Switch came out, 2017? You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. We're already like 8 years into the system's lifespan, and there is no budget line of games readily available for this system, which kind of makes you go, what's happening here? Nintendo knows that they can almost charge whatever they want for these games, and people will pay the price. I do know with the controversy of the $79.99 games, there are people screaming at Nintendo that they need to drop the price. Let's be realistic. Nintendo really doesn't have to drop the price. Tariffs aside, they're going to sell a ton of this. They're going to sell a ton of these systems. You damn well know everybody is going to want to at least play the new Mario Kart game on this thing. That's the main selling point. Now, another thing I will say, before we start talking about the fact that Nintendo Amiibos are still going to be a thing on this as evidence when they announced that Street Fighter 6 is coming with new Nintendo Amiibos made for that game, and also the system does have direct backwards compatibility. The one thing that I will tell you that I have hope for, and also was a little bit disappointed about, is the fact that Nintendo does seem to be reviving some of their back franchise of games. You guys know, if you watch this channel, I am a huge F-Zero. I am a huge Star Fox person. I'm a huge Kid Icarus guy. And I was always disappointed by the way that Nintendo handled those franchises. Well, I did see, along with the announcement of Donkey Kong Bonanza, Nintendo is going to be doing an updated version of Kirby Air Ride, which was a niche game back when it was released originally 20-some years ago for the Nintendo GameCube. So I'm glad to see that they are making a sequel to that game. That gives me hope that maybe Nintendo will do the right thing, bring out a new version of F-Zero, maybe Star Fox, maybe Kid Icarus, possibly, I know this is a long shot, a new Punch-Out game, because I really like those more esoteric Nintendo franchises that Nintendo seems to have abandoned. But I will say that does give me hope when I saw that they were working on a new Kirby Air Ride game, because that wasn't actually a mega seller back when it debuted for the Nintendo GameCube. Most people did not really own that game. I think it did enter the Player's Choice library at some point, but it took a while for that game to sell over 1 million copies, if I remember correctly. Now let's talk about backwards compatibility here, because most Nintendo Switch games are going to be backwards compatible on this system, and this is kind of good news for companies like Limited Run. I think Limited Run Games is going to, of course, make versions of their games for the Nintendo Switch 2. So this brings in more physical media for this system, which is an overall good thing. We have Nintendo Amiibo support, if you guys are into those. I do know the Nintendo Amiibo fad has pretty much lessened over the years. Even now, prices are down across the board on most Amiibos. There are some diehards out there still paying a premium for some of them. But overall, let's be realistic, that frenzy kind of died out. I do think that Nintendo Amiibos do have a lot of organic collectability, just due to the fact that they are a fully produced line of toys, figurines that are interactive in nature and produced directly by Nintendo. So I think they have a bright future in that regard. But it got to the point where Nintendo pretty much oversaturated the market with those type of toy figurines. And as a result, just demand started to fizzle. I do know if you shop in the US at least, GameStop, Best Buy, and Target do stock Nintendo Amiibos. Other stores have pretty much pulled back. I do know Walmart doesn't really carry Nintendo Amiibos in their stores anymore. Toys R Us went defunct. Even Amazon is hit or miss if you want to order them off of Amazon. It's really, if you're collecting Nintendo Amiibo in the United States, it's GameStop, Target, and Best Buy are your best bets. So with that being said, I am excited about the system in regards to all the controversies with pricing, with tariffs, with everything going on. I think that Nintendo is going to have a hit on their hands. I will say this, though. This almost reminds me of the introduction of the new Nintendo 3DS more than a whole new system. And I consider that both good and bad. The key here is going to be what type of games Nintendo brings out over the next 6 months, over the next year. Metroid 4 looks awesome, Metroid Prime 4, but you also have to understand there's going to be that game readily available for the original Nintendo Switch. So it'll be interesting to see what upgraded features, other than the mouse compatibility that they're talking about, or you can use the detachable Nintendo Switch gamepads as mouses, or mice, I guess I should say, like you're playing a computer shooter. That adds a whole new dynamic to this. But really, it's Nintendo's game to lose at this point. Let's be realistic. At this point, Microsoft really isn't a competitor. It's really just Sony and Nintendo right now that pretty much is jockeying back and forth with the ball, showing what they can do. I am pro physical media, so I am kind of glad that Nintendo went in this direction, even with the $79.99 games. As long as they don't keep releasing games that have the stupid downcode key in the box, I'm okay with this. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I think this actually is a plus to physical media collectors. I think that this is going to have some collectability going forward as a result. Thank you for watching and have a great night. And if you're subscribed to this channel, I will see you in the next video.